Hello, everyone. This is Isabel, and my presentation will be about predominantly still my bibliography, presenting my essay. The topic I've chosen is Bushido, and I specifically have gone for Aikido, the peaceful martial art. The main question I will be answering in my essay is how has Aikido maintained its peaceful ethos in a global environment that often values aggression and spectacle? That is my main thoughts. And in the West, martial arts are usually imagined as, violent, competitive, or practical for self-defense. And so in this essay, I will combine practitioners' perspectives, especially my own, and historical and cultural research to address this question. And I want to start a bit extra about why I chose this topic. And I have trained Aikido since I was 13 years old. I've also trained in many different countries. I've trained in 2 dojos in Norway, 1 dojo in England, and multiple, I think 5 in Japan. And so I have seen how different cultures interpret the philosophy and ethos of Aikido in different ways and in their own manner, what techniques do they focus on, what from O-sensei do they preach. And something I've noticed over the years is whenever I tell people I practice a martial art, they predominantly assume I'm dangerous. Remind me not to piss you off, or I'm skilled in fighting. And I have to go out of my way to explain that Aikido isn't about fighting. It's about harmony, balance, and redirecting energy. And this gap between Aikido and Aikido culture as I've experienced and lived it, and Aikido as imagined through a Western lens, is what sparked my interest in the topic and specifically the question I've chosen. But before going further, some of you might not know what Aikido actually is. And I briefly mentioned that it's a martial art, but it is a martial art founded by Morihei Ueshiba, often referred to as O-sensei, great teacher by practitioners. And it's a martial practice focused on non-resistance, redirection, and protecting both partners. There is a lot of repetitive rolling techniques during training, so we can fall safely, and so the techniques can be practiced without causing injury to either party. It is also one of the few martial arts with no competitions or tournaments. Unlike judo or karate, Aikido has refused to shift towards being a sport, setting it apart from other global martial arts. A fun little fact about Aikido is that there's basically only 2 belt colors. Traditionally, there was only 1 white. There's white until you reach a high enough level to become a black belt, where you will also wear the black pants, hakama, as you see in this photo. But in the olden days, there was only white belts, and you would never wash the belt. And eventually, through years of blood, sweat, and tears, the belts would become black. You could look at someone's belt and you could see how worn out they were and how discolored they were, and that represented how dedicated you were to Aikido. And the symbolism remains, and we still don't really wash our belts, but we do switch between them, and we might throw them in the washer every now and then, and we do just get an actual black belt when you reach a high enough level. But it's still a fun fact, I think, and I like the symbolism of it. And the name itself, Aikido. Do is really common in any martial arts because it's the path or the way of doing something. But we have I for peace or harmony, Ki for energy or spirit, and then path, way, Do. And Aikido is usually translated as the path of harmony or the way of harmonizing energy. And I really like these kanjis. I have written them many times over the years. And in my essay, my primary source is The Art of Peace, collecting Jewish, O-sensei reflections and teachings. It is a book that emphasizes peace as his foundation for creating Aikido. And to get a better, of course, view of understanding this book, we need to understand the author a bit more, the founder, O Sensei. Morihei Ueshiba was a politically right-leaning man shaped by pre-war militaristic Japan. So he is complex. Many of his quotes, when taken out of context, and some still remaining in the context of Aikido, resonate with us today, being in line with our perspective of peace. But that might be creating an idealized version of this man. Like, he was for assassinations of like political rivals. He is a product of his time, you can say. And when I was researching, I was genuinely surprised to learn about his political background, because based on how he is talked about in training spaces and in Aikido dojos, I would have assumed he was much more neutral or left-leaning, making me think, consider more like how he has been like deified within our communities, in like specific Aikido communities. So making an important question potentially for my essay is, have we cherry-picked parts of his ideology? Has he been mythologized in both Western and Japanese retellings of Aikido's history? And if his teachings have been reinterpreted into something positive, is it even necessary or fair to judge his politics by modern standards? I personally don't think so. Like, I wouldn't have like worshipped him as a god, but he has, I feel like in Aikido spaces, become more a symbol of peace, and just his peaceful rhetoric about Aikido remains. There are some talks about how he had some like talks about he learned Aikido through Kami, who taught him Aikido's techniques in a dream. But that's not really relevant in almost every Aikido space I've been in. His more religious or political standings haven't been super focused on. And so that's, but I'm going to delve maybe more into O-sensei, and when I've decided whether or not to focus on that as part of it or just referencing in my essay. And then we're moving on to what I mentioned earlier, Western perceptions of martial arts, which are another major part of my research. And Western views are shaped by combative sports like boxing or MMA, I feel. And they're also like their view of Eastern martial arts is also shaped by the martial arts movies they're watching, that portrays Eastern arts as either mystical or extremely violent, like with ninjas. And these influences shape how Aikido is misunderstood sometimes, romanticized, and sometimes dismissed. And I think this kind of tension can become like central to my essay. Being a Westerner who have received a lot of like Western's view, even though I have been kind of indoctrinating myself into the Eastern view through being here and since a young age indulging in this culture. And another relevant aspect, of course, is Bushido. That's the topic I chose, Bushido being the way of the warrior. One of my secondary sources, explore how Bushido was reinvented in modern Japan, and partially for nationalistic purposes, and how Aikido's peaceful identity developed both in relation to and in contrast with that militarized culture, which will help explain how Aikido fits within Japanese martial tradition while also diverging from it. So I feel like that's a good like base for my essay. And then we have a secondary source I was actually really excited about, and I'm actually really wanting to read more about it, as it discusses real Aikido. I'm doing quotations with my fingers. It's a post-war reinterpretation that fully rejects O-sensei's peaceful approach. Real Aikido is like a divergent from the main Aikido. It emphasizes dominance, efficiency, and violence. It's actually the stark opposite to what Aikido stands for. showing how easily a peaceful martial arts can be transformed through like cultural and necessary reinterpretation. Well, I don't think it was necessary. I feel it was brutalized, and I think the paper discusses that too. But I feel like it kind of mirrors Western expectation that martial arts should be combative or practical. And real Aikido is essentially a Japanese martial art redesigned to be more violent and more effective. And that contrast helps illustrate how interpretations can shift dramatically. And so to summarize my sources, we have my primary source, Ueshiba's The Art of Peace, secondary sources, post-war organizational development, Bushido history, martial arts anthropology, real Aikido case study, and of course, practitioner's perspective, like my own and others, and historical and textual analysis. And so to my conclusion, in my essay, I think I want to focus on Aikido's path of harmony, like heavily, how it has been built, preserved, and reinterpreted through the years, the Western view of it and how that has affected, if it has affected it, and how modern Aikido practitioners, Aikidokas, navigate the myth and reality of Aikido's philosophy and ethos. And I think, like, I have this sentence that I want to, like, maybe focus on towards the conclusion of my actual essay, is I want to be focusing on how Aikido remains a martial arts defined not by fighting, but by the intention to transform conflict, both physical and internal, into harmony, and how that has remained the core of Aikido throughout the years, even if the exact interpretations of the meaning behind peace might have changed with who is practitioner, like what century are we in, what is the modern world, what is the society we are currently active in. But so maybe we reinterpreted peace throughout the years, but the core of Aikido has and always will be harmony and peace. And that is my bibliography and plan for my essay. And thank you all so much for listening to me ramble. And I hope you have some good feedback for me so I can actually start working on this essay and actually get somewhere. Thank you so much for listening.